Hi.
Hi, Donnie.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. All right. Before we get started, what's your name?
My name's Carleah Summers.
Carleah Summers. All right, Carleah, can you tell me what you're doing now, and then we can roll into what it was like?
Absolutely. So currently, I am the executive director of Nathan's Ridge Incorporated, as well as Rainbow of Love Recovery Foundation. Nathan's Ridge will be providing housing for individual men and women, and Rainbow of Love Recovery Foundation will be providing housing for substance-dependent women and children.
Good. All right. So, can you let me know where your journey started at? I'm talking about the beginning, not the beginning. How did it start?
So I didn't grow up like the average kid. I had a really good childhood, and I always say, we don't get addicted just because we're in the streets. I was never in the streets. I was private school educated. And unfortunately, I had to deal with sexual abuse. I was sexually molested by one of my cousins for 2 summers in a row. And it really had a negative impact on me to the point that when I was 12 years old...
Slow up. Wow, jeez. You said that kind of easy, so that means you worked through it. It's it's not a big deal.
I worked through it. That's what this program is.
So you don't feel as though you were being victimized? You feel like you were being taken advantage of?
I don't ever feel like a victim. Okay. I feel like everything that happens for a reason.
Okay.
And through those things, of course, I dealt with the hard times of it. But through those things, I've learned to give back and help other women with it. So there's no part of me that feels like a victim today.
All right. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Come on, go.
Stupid.
Go.
So then, at 12 years old, I tried to commit suicide. Just the pain from dealing with that. The abuse occurred when I was 8, 9 years old, and so it was very difficult for me to recover from that mentally. But I was able to get into sports in high school. I had really good grades. I really just stayed focused.
You're killing us, man. People watching it what sports is she talking about?
Softball and basketball.
Are you good or are you just...
I'm good at everything I do. No, I'm just kidding. No, I was decent. But the thing I liked the most was team sports. It made me feel like I had a family. I had somewhere to belong and fit in. And I'm still really close with a lot of my teammates to this day. And so that really, really took the focus off of that abuse and gave me something else to focus on.
Okay.
And so when I really started to go downhill was my senior year. I ended up having surgery. I have a history of getting cysts all over my body. I've had them removed from my wrist, my eye, various places. I ended up having 5 cysts total removed from my foot, but the first time I had it removed, I was prescribed opiates. And from that point on, it was all downhill from there. I had been accepted to West Virginia University, got accepted into the School of Journalism, have always wanted to be a news anchor all my life, my entire life. I walked around interviewing people in the neighborhood. My mom used to call me Rona Bear and tell me I was nosy, but I loved it. It's, I just have always been fascinated with people and their stories. And, when I got to WVU, I ended up graduating from high school, got to WVU.
That's West Virginia University.
West Virginia University. Right. I held it together for a couple years. But once I got into it, I just couldn't, I just let go.
What do you mean by held it together? Were you using drugs?
So at this time, I hadn't started using drugs. I was drinking, and I had been drinking since I was 12 years old. But once I got to WVU, I really buckled down and was serious about my grades, continuing that discipline from sports. Mm-hmm. But then something just happened, and I honestly can't even tell you what. But the pressure, probably more than anything, of performing and my parents want me to do well, and just the journalism came so easy to me. I had the deep voice, I had the look, and so it just came with ease to me. So once I got on the air, I was accepted into the journalism program, and I became the sports anchor for WVU News.
Nice.
Well, as great as that is, it's one of my, my saddest moments, because this opportunity should have been the biggest opportunity of my life. But I would go on the air high. You know,
high off what? Marijuana?
Marijuana at the time. And I would start getting high and I couldn't function sober. So I was covering the primary election, chosen to cover the primary elections for West Virginia, high. You know, I was just, you know, at this point, I didn't even recognize myself.
Do you think people knew you were high or?
You know, I don't, because I think that I would have been put off, you know, but I was at that time, I was very careful with my disease. You know, I was still in that I can pull the strings type of thing, you know. I can look how you want me to look and you don't have to know. But then eventually it progressed to everybody knew, because then I became hooked on the pills. I had another foot surgery, became really hooked on the pain pills, smoking marijuana, and I was drinking probably a half gallon of vodka daily. Going to bars, it got really out of control. When it got really bad, my senior year, I ended up having to go back home because I had put a hole in my esophagus from drinking so much alcohol.
You mean a hole in your esophagus?
Yes, which I still have to this day. And so I don't eat hot foods. I don't eat anything spicy, anything too acidic, because it'll crunch my voice. I can't afford for it to be any deeper than it is. It just makes me feel horrible. So even to this day, I feel those effects, you know, and I have almost 14 years, you know, of sobriety. So it is definitely something that it's had long lasting effect on me, without a doubt.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of the backstory, and honestly, I was just out of control. I got pregnant my senior year.
You were still using?
I was still using. I was able to stop drinking and popping pills, but I kept smoking weed while I was pregnant. And, you know, by the grace of God, you know, my son was healthy, but I just was not able to kick it. And on March 28th, 2006, I got up and I told my mom, I can't do it anymore. I have to go to treatment. That was actually March 27th. On March 28th, I went to Mountain Manor in Emmitsburg.
Oh, hold on. We got to spin it back. You missed a lot of stuff in the middle. I mean, come on. Like, what happened that made all this happen? Like,
so
what type of things occurred besides the
really what happened is I got sick. I was taking like 8 pills a day just to be able to digest my food. I was down to like 105 pounds.
And those pills were prescribed?
Yes, and those pills were prescribed. And I was just miserable. I literally drank and popped pills and smoked just to be able to function. You know.
And what were you doing? Like, what were you like doing during this? Okay, so the using was from what? Like high school, college?
So the drinking was from 12 years on, but I definitely didn't drink during sporting events, during sports season. Okay. So that was still somewhat manageable. So I would say probably from like 18 to 23.
We want to know what happened into that part. No,
so in
you can't
that part,
just fumble over that.
In that part, I was in college for the majority of that. Okay. So I think my story is probably similar to most. You know, I partied all the time. I didn't go to class. I didn't want to go to class. And then at this point, I realized that I had literally thrown away everything, every opportunity that I had been afforded to. I could have gone to any news station in the country that I wanted to and been, you know, a top news anchor. I threw it down the drain, you know, and to this day, that is a really hard pill to swallow for me because that was all I've ever wanted to do. And so once I realized that I had ruined it, then it really got out of control. I continued to drink more and more and more.
So alcohol was basically your drug of choice?
Alcohol was my drug of choice as well as pain pills because I used them hand in hand.
Did you escape like the law? Have you got in trouble? Or
I don't think anybody escapes the law. Well, a lot of this stuff is like until you say it, I don't really think about it. But I had a boyfriend in college, and you know, I'm using, and I joined a sorority. That's the other
Kappa.
Yeah, I'm
K8 side.
So I joined a sorority, and that also did not help my disease at all. I watched a lot of things in the sorority. I've watched probably any drug known to mankind being smoked, sniffed, or shot. And so that didn't help. And, talking about that before I even get to the arrest, I had this one sorority sister. I'll never forget her. Her name was Melissa Amster. And
you want me to bleep that out? It don't matter.
It don't matter.
Go ahead.
I always say I got to thank her to this day.
Okay.
Because she would never, ever, ever let me touch cocaine or anything hard. She would always say to me, "You're different. You can't touch this stuff." And I say to this day, had they let me participate with the rest of them, it'd be done. It would be, I don't think I would be sitting here right now talking to you, because that's the kind of addict I was, I was just fortunate that I had people around me that saw something in me that I didn't see. And I always say God kept angels around me, even in the worst moments, because I was ready. I was ready to go to the next level. I was like, I'm tired of popping these pills and smoking weed. What's new? What you got next for me? But by the grace of God, I never made it that far. So about the good part, Donnie, the arrest.
Oh, the arrest? Wait, that's not the good part. We're still in the destruction part. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the arrest, I had a boyfriend in college, and he ended up sleeping with one of my childhood friends, and he took my car to do it. And so, I was high, I was drunk, and some liquid courage and a little bit of muscle go a long way, So, I just went back to the house, did what it do, I don't have to tell you. I got very physical with him.
Did you hurt this man?
Oh, I did. I busted his eardrum. I was very violent. Very, very violent. And when most people look at me today, they're like, no way. I was a very, very violent individual. I was a fighter. Even in middle school, I was a fighter.
Where do you think that came from?
Just pent-up aggression from the abuse and not being able to channel that or be in some type of therapy to deal with that. And I became very, very aggressive, and especially towards men. I had no respect for them whatsoever, never wanted to be around them, didn't, just treated them like they were nothing, because that's how they treated me. That was my first contact.
And that came from your past.
And that came from my past,
okay.
And so he called the cops. I was arrested. And I would have to say, I think that was not only a shameful moment for me, it was for my parents. It was like, here's this girl who, got every award, who killed it in high school. We sent her off to college. Everybody's waiting to see what she's going to do. And we're getting a call that she's getting arrested, for fighting a dude on top of that.
You think it was drug fueled plus the emotional?
Absolutely. I think I probably would have reacted similar, sober. Because again, I still had that temper. But I think
still have that temper now?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Good.
I don't.
Because I was going
I'm not a fighter anymore. No. So right. I just now because I'm at peace now, and then I was at war with myself, and everybody was a target. Everybody was a target because I wanted to know who was going to hurt me next, and I was going to hurt you before you hurt me. And it was that simple. That simple.
So you went to jail,
in
county
Morgantown,
jail.
West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Where they put me on suicide watch because I was under the influence. And I stayed overnight. My parents were in Arizona, so there was nobody to bail me out. So they let me out on the OR the next morning, and really, that's when I will honestly say that's when I realized, when I physically said to myself, you have a problem. You seriously have a problem. This is what you came here to do, and you're in handcuffs in a jail. And that's when I really started to realize, you're out of control. I mean, coming home, not knowing how I got home. I had backed the car in, everything. No clue. I didn't drop 5 people off. I have no idea who I dropped off, where I dropped them off, or how I even got home. But then everyone's telling me the next day you drove. You know, and so that scared me. You know, it really did. It scared me. And so then getting pregnant with my son was almost like a blessing in disguise because
and your son was by the guy you butched his eardrum.
No. This was by a guy I was dating in high school.
Okay.
So, you know, again, not respected men. I can admit that today. Nobody was really my man back then. You know what I mean? Because it was just kind of like, okay, you're my man for right now. You know, I'm not really interested in that whole, I'm not committing to anything because I don't feel like guys had the respect for me to commit to them. And so...
so the record of your past just boiled over into everything.
Literally
so
everything.
Anybody who wanted you had a problem.
Correct.
Because you were going to take out whatever happened in your past.
Absolutely.
On him. Okay. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yep. Absolutely.
Plus, I know people watching like, what is she talking? You know, I want to make sure they know.
So it did. It just took over every aspect. And I say that and I talk about it a lot in meetings and even when I'm asked to speak out places is that abuse, people don't realize how toxic it is. Not only to relationships, but to your self-esteem and your self-worth and just how you deal with people in general. When someone takes advantage of you like that, it takes so much from you. It takes your innocence from you. It really takes your ability to look at people.
You said you wanted to commit suicide.
Too. Yeah.
Did you attempt it or you just wanted to?
I attempted. I took an entire 5th, and again, remember I'm 12, of alcohol, and I chugged it. And I was, also took some pills that my mom had in her bathroom. And thank God my brother was there. He called 911 and, I had to be rushed to the hospital. And of course they were able to do what they needed to do. But again, just realizing that pain I was in and, you know, my parents never took that extra step to get me, you know, that counseling that I needed. And it just got put on the back burner, but it never went away. It just stayed there, you know, and so it festered into.
So people did know about the abuse, but nothing was done about it.
Well, no one knew about the abuse until I went to treatment and I told my mom. Was the first time at 23 years old that I had ever spoken about the abuse. So at that time, it was just like, what is going on? You know, because I've always been very good at holding myself together on the outside.
Okay.
So not what's going on the inside definitely does not reflect on the outside.
Well, so you was able to mask what was going on the inside, but holding yourself together. I mean, if you're driving home and don't know how you got here, that's not holding yourself together. Right. So where are we at?
But I'm at a party school where everybody thinks that this is acceptable because that's what everybody's doing.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about a party school where you can get a penny pitcher of alcohol or beer. Literally. So, I mean, it's not abnormal there. If I was at home, people would have been like, have you lost your mind? But in a party school where everybody is, and I'm not going to say everybody, but the majority of the school is partying and acting crazy, I don't think anybody thought twice about it. It's just, this is what she does when she goes out.
So what drugs was it that you used before we get to the treatment part?
So Percocets were my drug of choice, marijuana and alcohol. And I never used one without the other.
So it was like salt.
Yes. They all went in hand. I would put them together, and it just really created this cloud that I love to be in. It made me not have to focus on the abuse. It made me not have to deal with my issues. I didn't have to look at the destruction around me. And at this time, I had been put out of my college apartment, so I'm bouncing, still not realizing I got an issue.
Dorm room to dorm room.
I'm bouncing from dorm rooms, staying on friends' couches, all of that, still not registering that I have an issue. So, it just spiraled out of control. Big time.
And then, so after college, you went straight into Mount Manor after college, or did you have some time where you were?
So I had some time because I was pregnant.
Okay.
So I went home with my parents. Again, I kept smoking weed. And I ended up falling down the steps when I was like 7 months pregnant. And the dog went in between my legs going down the steps, and it sent me into early labor. Well, as a result of that, it put me on bed rest, and I couldn't smoke. So my mom had to watch me at the house because they were afraid I was going to, deliver prematurely. And so I ended up giving birth to my son. He had a low birth weight. He was 5 pounds, 10 ounces, obviously from smoking. And then I went right back into the same cycle. I don't think I was home for a week before I was drinking, popping pills, doing the same thing I was doing before. And what precipitated me to go into treatment was my son was crying one night, screaming, and I didn't hear him at all. And thank God I was in the house with my mom, because I slept through the baby monitors. I slept through everything. And it was at that point, it didn't take me getting locked up, DUI, anything like that. That was my sober moment right there. I was like, my mom looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You have got to get help. This is crazy. You've got to get help." And I just remember feeling like this big, because my mom is like one of the toughest people I know, and she never cries. And I could see the pain in her face. Like, you can't do this anymore. So, it wasn't even at that moment I called. It was probably like a week later. And I just remember praying, just asking God to either take my life or to show me what direction. Just, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I got up the next morning. I called Mount Manor. The outpatient, they brought me in for an assessment. They said, "You can go tomorrow morning." And that was it. One and done, man.
No one and done. How did that process start? Like, when you got there, did you start revealing stuff, like, with the help of...
Yeah, so when I got there, I was very closed off to treatment, because all I wanted to do was go home. I was like...
So you wanted to go, but then when you got there, you
wanted
to leave.
I was like, I do not want to be here. Where is this? But I knew, I was smart enough to know I needed to be there. And so I stuck it out, and I really learned a lot while I was there.
Like, what'd you learn?
What I mainly learned was that it was okay to let those secrets out, meaning talking about the abuse. And it was okay that I had no self-esteem and no self-worth, and that I felt like I was not worthy of being in a relationship or even being alive because of what I had done to my son, or because of how I had lived previously. And then that shame and guilt of driving under the influence and knowing that I could have killed people, including myself, it really taught me to forgive myself for the things that I had done, because I really struggle with that. I still struggle with that at times.
How long did it take you to forgive yourself?
Oh, man. I would say probably a solid 3 or 4 years. And that's working a program, going to meetings, doing things like that, because it did not come overnight. There was so much guilt. Guilt of spending my parents' money on college and wasting it like that, and again, using while I was pregnant and just not making better decisions, and guilt of basically robbing myself of a future, of I could have been where I wanted to be, but now look where you are. You're sitting in a treatment center. And this is where you went from being news anchor extraordinaire to I am sitting in Mountain Manor Treatment Center. Detoxing, trying to figure out what in the hell just happened.
So when did the lights turn on? And tell me how that brought you to where you are now, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So the lights turned on basically, really, the lights just turned on a few.
You better not say yesterday. Oh my God.
I always say my lights turn on at moments. I don't like to tell people when I got clean, because people think that you don't make mistakes. I've made just as many mistakes in recovery as I have made using, and maybe not on that caliber, but in my mind, they have still been shameful, and so the light is constantly coming on for me. And my life is, I just spoke at a meeting last night, led a meeting last night. It's just one day at a time. That's all I have. One day at a time, because every day is based on what decisions I make. If I make a bad decision today, it's not going to be good for, it may not be good for a week. It may not be good for a year or two, based on that decision. And so the light bulb goes off, Donnie, honestly, a little bit here and there, every once in a while I get something else, I'm like, oh, okay. Like right now I'm working with my sponsor. I'm doing a step 4 on my, on my ex-husband. And,
you still have resentments for that person?
I do. And it took her telling me, yeah, you do.
So the resentments is of your making, not his, basically.
No,
well, he had something to do with it.
Absolutely.
I mean, he had something to do with it, but
so did I.
Okay.
And so, getting into that marriage, marrying somebody I knew for a month, in the way that I did, it affected my career. It affected a lot of things. And I'll tell you what, that is the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. Because not only did I go through domestic violence and abuse, but I dealt with domestic violence and abuse while I was battling cervical cancer. And then once I began to heal from that mistake that I made, I had that scab ripped off and then had to pay the ultimate consequences for it. And I lost a lot of friends from it. I lost a lot of people I thought were my friends. And it was very humbling for me, because at that moment, at that point in time, I learned that my life and my friendships and my relationships and my life are so priceless, because I learned who my true friends were. And I also got a strength that I never, ever knew that I could have. And I got this motivation, Donnie. I'm telling you, for every person that just bashed me and shamed me, I got this motivation that has given me a drive to just change as many lives as I can. And I'm so grateful. And I said to my sponsor, I would do it all over again. And she's like, and it was painful. I'm talking about laying in bed, not wanting to get out, not wanting to do anything, going back to that suicidal ideation, people not realizing what the effect their comments had on me. It crushed me to the point that I just did not want to go on. I didn't. I was like, I'm done. There's nothing else. I was shamed, and then feeling my own guilt, and then saying, you got all this sobriety time. Like, what are you thinking?
So you kind of forgot about the steps when things started coming out.
Oh, yeah.
You
absolutely.
You forgot about all your tears.
Absolutely. I became human.
No.
You know what I mean? I became human. And I like to say, I'm in recovery. I have tools. But there are times when you go through things and you're like, what tools? I just felt what I was feeling. I felt the emotions.
But you did you? And how did you act on these feelings?
Again, that's where the tools came in.
Okay.
I knew not to act out on them, because old Carleah would have just created a path of destruction, but I didn't. I accepted the part that I played, and that's what this program has afforded me today. I didn't start pointing fingers at people. I didn't start the blame game. I said, Carleah, what part did you play in this? And the fact of the matter is, I played a huge part in it. And so once I got done licking my wounds and I got up off the ground, I said, what you gonna do next? What are you gonna do next? And so I gave birth to Rainbow of Love Recovery Foundation. I said, I'm going after my dream. You know, I've already had one stripped from me, but it doesn't mean I have to have a second one. And it's what I live and breathe every day. It is my passion. It's my absolute drive. My husband and I put in hours after hours. You know, we're constantly talking about it. How can we better this? How can we do this? Where can we get properties? You know, I have a wonderful board, you know, that definitely supports me.
So you basically learn from your mistakes and you turn lemons into lemonade.
Bam. Absolutely.
She said bam.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and that's really my message, Donnie, to women when I'm talking. You know, nobody promises us that everything's gonna be great. We could wake up today and it all fall apart. But at the end of the day, I am so blessed to have, you know, I'm in my right frame of mind. I have a wonderful network. I have an awesome family. I have great people surrounding me. And most of all, God has given me a second chance to do something great. And I mean, talk about showing up and showing out. I mean, he has gone above and beyond, which lets me know he's saying it's okay. It's okay.
So you feel as though you're overpaid for the work that you do.
Absolutely.
So really quick before you end this, it looks like you're like spoken out. I'm cool with that though. So as of right now, like, what do you have to say to like any woman or anybody that's watching this right now, looking for a way to do something better?
So I would say the way to do something better is just to not give up on yourself. You know, I have a phrase that I say is always stay in the fight. You know, you're going to fight. Life is one big fight. And that's honestly how I view it. It doesn't matter if I'm fighting, you know, to get my kids to the next level, if I'm fighting to grow my marriage, the nonprofit, whatever it is. Life is always going to have its obstacles. But you got to stay in the fight, because if you don't stay in the fight, you don't know what blessings you have, you know, in store for you. And the way I look at it, Donnie, is I've come too far to give up. I've come through too many things, and God has brought me through too many things to just throw in the towel. So that's always my line. I use it all the time. You got to stay in the fight, because when you feel like quitting the most, that's when you're the closest to your blessings. And so right now, I'm the closest I've ever been.
Damn. Well, that was good. It looked like you did this a lot of times before, because this has been really good. I didn't have to do too much coaching.
News anchor.
I forgot. Okay. I appreciate you sharing your message with everybody that's watching this channel. Even though it's a new channel, there's going to be a couple hundred people that's going to watch it, and I hope they get something from it. And I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Donnie.
You're welcome.